Good morning, gentlemen. Developing your own identity service is super hard, guys. Let's see what can go wrong doing that. First, as you can see in the diagram here, usually the way we develop authentication and authorization is having a relational database holding our identity records. An identity is a representation of a user that specifies which application this user can access. For instance, that's a web application sitting here side by side with the relational database holding our identity records. So whenever a user tries to access a web application, he provides us with his credentials. Then our application checks whether this user exists in the database we are managing in order to decide whether this user is authenticated or not, and if it is authenticated, what this user is authorized to do. That's authentication in a nutshell. Now, the problem here is that most of us on a daily basis uses several internal applications in our organizations. So you can imagine us in case each application is managing its own identity store, like these two web applications here. Every time you need to access, for instance, application 1, you have to provide the credentials there. Then when you go to application 2, you have to log in again and access this second application, which leads to poor user experience. Plus, operations team here responsible of managing these identities have to go through each application database where identities are stored to manage these records. For instance, if they want to remove or an employee or a user that should not access the system anymore, or an employee who resigned, operations team following this approach have to go through each identity store and remove or deactivate that user itself, which is error prone since this operation employee or person may forget to remove that user from all the applications. Now, the second problem, in addition to the poor user experience, is that there are several features you need to build yourself if you want to manage or develop your own identity system. The first one is reset password, for instance. If you got the chance to develop an identity management system yourself from A to Z, you will understand how it is difficult to take care of the nitty-gritty details of such system. We are talking here about several features. Resetting your password, changing password, user registration, plus recently you have the multi-factor authentication thing, which is very time consuming. I'm not sure if the cost of the time invested in such feature worth the cost incurred there. And so many hard to develop and maintain systems. So the second thing is we can call hard features. The third, the last one, is related to security, guys. How are we going to store these passwords and email or usernames in a secure fashion? How are you going to ensure your system or your identity or your system as a whole is safe against all attack vectors? You need probably a cybersecurity expert dedicated or with specific expertise on layer 7 web application security. And you always need to make sure your system passes all the security vulnerability, old and current and the new ones. So again, guys, developing your own identity service is a lot of work. Let's go to a better solution. Which is the federated identity pattern. You see here, handling users or managing users plus the authentication part is now the responsibility of an external system we call the identity management system or identity provider, IDP. The mechanism works as follows. We have an application here sitting somewhere on the cloud or on premises. The users through the browser first visit that application, xyz.com. Since that application have a trust relationship, partnership with the identity management system, it knows that this user isn't authenticated yet. Therefore, it directs the user to the identity provider URI, telling him go authenticate there. That's what happens when you try to access a system and it directs you, for instance, to Azure Active Directory URI, login.microsoft.something. Then the user automatically gets redirected to the IDP login page, totally separated from our application here. The user provides his credential, the IDP system checks and returns a token that has claims in it. The claim contains the email address plus probably the full name of that user. Having the token, user now can access the application providing the token itself, telling the application that here you go, that's the token you asked for. And since the application have a trust relationship with the identity management, it knows that this user is authenticated to access me as application. This identity system, identity management system, is managing users per application. Each application in an organization or in an identity management system has its own users. So, plugging a different application here with the same trust setup with the identity management system, another user can access this application and follow the same mechanism. Now, there are several things to consider when you want to follow this approach. First, the identity provider system is a mission-critical one. When you have it in place, it acts as a single point of failure. Be careful, guys. That's why the system must have high availability. It must be performant. It must have strong security mechanism in place. Not having that can lead to your operations interrupted, losing money, guys. The second thing is that sometimes you have users sitting in an Active Directory system that belongs to a different company or an additional company your headquarter or your organization acquired. This kind of storage will have records we call federated identities. We can set up a trust relationship with our IDP between this and the external Active Directory system and have this acquired organization employees access our system without the need to create these records inside our IDP. That's a huge benefit there. Now, you have to pay attention that this kind of system, whether it is a company you are acquiring or maybe users reside in an external, in a public system like Google, Facebook, for instance, we can provide the same mechanism to let people with Google accounts access our system. You need to make sure or pay attention that this kind of setup, these external identity systems provide only basic information like email and probably full names. So a good pattern to follow is if the user is authenticating for the first time on your application, is to ask after going through this mechanism and accessing the identity system authentication screen. After doing the authentication, you ask this user to fill in more information like his birthday, his full name, last name, in case only email is provided by the external identity system. Then you can save this augmented or extended information in your application database here or in the identity management system itself. The last thing, and is the most important and one of the most committed mistakes I see often when auditing systems, is there should be a separation between authentication and authorization, guys. The identity management system is responsible only for authentication. It tells you whether this user can access this application, giving you the claim needed there that contains the email full name. It is the responsibility of the application itself to do the authorization part. Don't do this mistake. Don't rely on the identity management system to provide you with this token that includes what the user can do. No, don't commit this mistake. Be careful. Again, the identity management system only authenticate users through the token provided. Then the application is responsible of managing the privilege store here, where it is saying, for instance, that user A can do this stuff X, Y. User B can do stuff Z. What the user can do is the responsibility of the application itself. Just be careful, guys, if you are in a situation where you have your identity management system customly developed, custom authentication in place, it is too late for you to go and develop or use an external identity management system. It won't worth the effort. You're gonna enter into several problems trying to sync between this identity store and the other system. So if you are in a situation where you have an application previously where you built this custom authentication for, don't go this way. On the other hand, if you are building the stuff from the beginning yourself, then you're gonna have a situation where multiple applications accessing this identity management system and benefiting from the single sign-on experience. That's where the identity management system can be a great option for you. The other thing is that if you are acquiring a new company and it has its own identity management system or Active Directory, probably on Azure, sitting on Azure, that's a great way to let this user access your application without the need to recreate all these employees yourself. That's it, guys.